Supported by and do not reflect those of the Evening Rush Network. Viewers' discretion is advised.
Up, clap it up, clap it up, clap it up. You are now tuned in to Plugged with Mahli and Joe, the Mental Warriors, with my brother Zachariah this season. One of the many blessings that we were blessed with coming out of the first seasons is your mind and the way you think and the way you come at different topics and such might not be, the taste for for many, but guess what? You my brother.
Hey man, I just feel like this platform for me was like a calling in itself, and I don't know. When I saw everything else that you were doing, I was inspired in so many other ways. I'm just honored to be a part of this, as I've said on multiple occasions. And I'm apologetically myself, and we have a lot of insight about what goes on behind the scenes a lot of times that I think people don't really understand. And if I gotta say it, I'm gonna say it. Or if it should be, I'm not gonna hold it.
Most definitely. Okay, topic of the day: culture of acceptable toxicity. It's almost like a two-part to what we were talking about last week: the mental state of our community and such. Of course, we're going to do making our ancestors proud this week. We got three brand new folk. I don't believe we repeated any of these people here, throughout our shows. This is our 30 something show. We're getting to our 40th soon, right? Getting to our one year anniversary, I believe, as well. All right. And of course, we have maybe one topic on current events. We'll have time for one topic, a very important topic, and that's the one the coach Brian Flores, who is trying to expose the NFL right now. So we definitely got a nice little lineup going, waiting for our brother Joe to come on. He is definitely scheduled to be on. He had a little bit of technical difficulty at the time. But what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the platforms we on. We on Amazon Music, Pandora, Stitcher, Podchaser, TuneIn, Reasons Podcast, Google Podcast, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Anchor.fm, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Mixcloud, iTunes Podcast, and of course the eveningrushnetwork.com. And of course you can get the Evening Rush Network as an app on your Android, and of course the that other stuff, the iOS, Apple, blah blah blah. All right, I'm a hater on Apple, just to let you guys know. All right, this past week, real quick, Zach, anything new? Anything going on for you this week?
It's been some stuff going on, man. A lot of personal issues, that I'm dealing with, but I always try to remain positive and push forward. So as far as the business endeavors, I have a lot of things in the making as always, but it's got to stay on the grind. That's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, week after week, I actually do get a lot of good news based on my community organization that I helped found. Big Apple Leadership Academy for the Out. Shout out to Baller, one of us, our sponsor, www.baller.org. Check us out. Check our videos. Check what we're doing. We just keep coming up with more and more things that we're trying to accomplish and get done. The resources, is little, but it's coming. You know what I mean? Everything just seems at a gradual motion, and it's progressing. It's progressing continuously. So, that's my week. It's always constantly trying to be better than the last week, so to say. It's like, I'm always trying to just elevate. So,
well, believe if I was in New York, I'd definitely be part of that somehow, some way.
Oh, well, you're part of it anyway. You know what I'm saying? At some point in time, we're going to have the resources and everything else to be able to get over, to get over there in Cali and do some things over that side. Even though it's kind of scary over there with all the goddamn earthquakes y'all be getting, man.
I mean, it hasn't been in a while, but you ain't got to speak nothing to existence or nothing,
Man, no, I mean, listen, the news be trying to scare us on this side, bro. They always telling me how it's shaking over there, man.
Yeah. Well, sometimes there'll be a little tremor. It's like California's become jaded to that. Before, I remember when it first started when I was a kid, you hear a little tremor, everybody running, jumping on the tables. Now people sleep through them.
Wow. Well, that's like the snowstorms. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's that's just like the snowstorms. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like
Oh, yeah.
in
True.
New York, we ain't nothing. What, a few feet? Come on, dog. We can dig out of that. You go to another place. A few feet is deadly. Is a national disaster.
See, I remember digging my truck out the snow many times in the wintertime.
Listen, with no problem, right? So what we're gonna do is today we're gonna make our ancestors proud before we get into our topic of the day. And first and foremost, again, Joe having a little bit technical difficulty. As soon as he get in here, we'll get him on, right? All right, Zach, who you have that's making our ancestors proud today?
Okay, so this one some people might be like, what? Just especially when you hear what we're talking about today. But
right.
I'm gonna tell you why as I go through what this man has done and what he's doing now. And I'm talking about Calvin Cortazor Broadus Jr., aka Snoop Dogg.
Never sing it.
So we know him as, gangster rapper, ex real gangster from Long Beach, and he still repping and says, he's a Crip, but from his image perspective, but what he does outside of rap music, doesn't reflect that. So let's start with how he started, his famous Doggy Style, iconic album that you could play from beginning to end, one of those classics, with all the hits on it that we all know and love, but that also, started out in the image portraying himself as a gangster player, pimp lifestyle. At the time, that was how he got into the entertainment industry as a young man, 21 years old, right? Mm-hmm. So, or I believe he was 19 when he first got up with Dr. Dre. But I had a personal, again, with this man, also had a personal relationship, who worked at the Can-Am Studios, who was contracted by Death Row Records. That was my first job, actually, my first real job. And, my first interaction with him, I remember he came up to me and was like, "Hey, homie, what's your name?" And I was like, Pound gave him my name, and I'm like, I said, "I know who you are, motherfucker." Anyway, so he laughed and he was like, "I need you to go to Burger King for me real quick." So that was my runner. I came back from Burger King. He let me keep the change from the $100 he gave me to go there for him and buy him one little meal. Then sent me later on that day to buy a whole bunch of weed for him in the hood of Long Beach. That's my first interaction with Snoop Dogg. But one of the coolest down to earth people in that circle that I've ever met. He acts the same way he does on camera in real life with regular people that he comes to face to face.
That's what's up. Shout out.
So last thing I want to mention, he changed a lot about his gangster lifestyle when Pac died. When they were on trial for the America's Most Wanted whole thing back then, and Pac was like, you gotta stay gangster, you gotta stay true to this. And Snoop was like, I don't want that. I'm trying to go straight. I'm trying to leave that alone. And he did. And just so happened, we see the way things played out. Pac died, shortly after that, and Snoop is still here. Now he's leading a football league, for the youth, and he also works with children with special needs. So I tip my hat off to him now for what he's doing, and he's straight away from that root of where he came from. I always give props to people that came from the grind and gutter and built something and now doing positive change for the community. So hats off to Snoop Dogg. Definitely rap icon going down in history.
Shout out to Snoop Dogg. We finally found Joe. Zachariah, never one to not have it much words.
I'm a lost for words kind of guy.
No, I didn't know I was lost, but yeah, I'm glad to be here.
You ain't know you was lost? Oh my God, bro!
And I was found.
All right, so who's making our ancestors proud for you this week, Joe?
This is somebody who I recently heard about over the course of the summer. Her name is Judith Batty. Judith Batty is the Judith Batty is, as of August, the first Black woman to lead the Girl Scouts. In 2014, she was a Scout mother, daughter of a Scout, Girl Scout, and troop leader. She began as a Brownie with her local Nassau County Council in New York and continued scouting through high school. Long after her scouting days were over, Judith remained involved with the Scouts and as a troop leader and eventually a national board member. So she's someone who climbed up the ranks through the Girl Scouts, and now she is the first Black female CEO. So in 108 years. So continue. Wow. I didn't even know that, because you would think Girl Scouts would have women leads or girl leads. So this is an accomplishment within itself. And thank you, Ms. Judith Batty. Continue the good work, and we look to see more from you.
That's what's up. That's the symbolism of how they've always just used women in general in this nation. You know what I mean? Use them as property and such. That's crazy. You know what I mean? In 108 years is the first woman that represented a woman's organization. Like, that's crazy. Like, that doesn't make any kind of sense to me. Wow. But speaking from one strong woman that's making a name for herself to someone who's already made the name for herself, my person that's making the ancestors proud this week is none other than the queen of hip hop and R&B, Mary J. She has reinvented herself time and time again. Like, she is one of the baddest women in the game, and there's not many that can match who she is, what she's done, what her message to a lot of the women. Iconic Grammy Award winning singer, songwriter, actress, producer, and philanthropist, Mary J. Blige is a figure of inspiration, transformation, and empowerment, making her one of the defining voices of the contemporary music era. With a track record of 8 multi-platinum albums, 9 Grammy Awards, plus a staggering 32 nominations, 2 Academy Award nominations, 2 Golden Globe nominations, and a SAG nomination, among many other accolades, Blige has cemented herself as a global superstar. In the ensuing years, the singer-songwriter has attracted an intensely loyal fan base, responsible for propelling worldwide sales of more than 50 million albums. Man.
No Grammy, just nominations.
9 Grammy Awards plus a staggering 32 nominations.
Okay.
So she got the Grammys, you know what I mean? But yeah, man, Mary, listen, she's the soundtrack to many of women's lives. Born in the Bronx, lived in swag straight from uptown New York, you know what I'm saying? She is one of the greats, you know what I mean? One of the greats, up there with Aretha Franklin, Shaka Khan, Gladys Knight, even Beyonce of today, you know what I'm saying? She definitely is making the ancestors proud. She making the current ancestor, the current goats, you know what I'm saying? The ones that's making the ancestors proud, that we say to give the flowers now, she making them proud as well. So shout out to Mary J. Blige, one of the best that have ever done it, one of the best that's doing it. Definitely. Man. All right. So we got through that. We got through making our ancestors proud. Right now, what we're going to do is we're going to jump right into what we consider topic of the day, culture of acceptable toxicity. But before we do that, we're going to introduce something that we're going to be doing in the near future for a while now. This is introduction to a book that we're reading, part of, I guess, the beginnings of a book club of sorts. We're introducing 1619. Okay, 1619. This is chapter 1. We're going to speak to that probably next week, probably a couple of weeks. We're going to talk about different topics and such, right? 1619 is a book about the history of slavery between, from that moment, from the beginning of what this country was built on till now. and it goes into depth without skipping different generations, without skipping different timelines. Zach, any intro to what you've seen so far?
I mean, I've just barely dug into it, but man, so inspiring already. Like I got choked up at first in the first few pages, then I got mad, and then I got inspired, and I'm just like, man, this is people need to be reading this, man. And I talk about this all the time, the education being the root or the miseducation sometimes of the problem. And I think this is one of the perfect books for all Americans to read. Not just Black Americans.
Yeah, I do agree with that. Joe, any intros to 1619 you want to speak to the people about?
It's just one of those books that you were taught to read as a youngster that you should be reading. Like, from what I've seen and from what I've read thus far, it's an eye opener. But it also confirms everything that we've discussed on the national platform, and I know other people have as well. Just it makes sense. So it's one of those type of books that you should be reading. Anybody and everybody should be reading it in order to get a true understanding of the year 1619 and what has happened therefore.
Right. Yeah. For me, it's the same thing as a confirmation about a lot of different things that we've been speaking about. Like a lot of the things that they speak to, I've already, probably seen or read or touched up on or what have you. And then it's opened up my eyes to so many more different things. It's actually given me a sense of pride in being a Black man here in America, whereas they actually probably made us want to feel, like you said, we want to feel like we're not worthy of this country, like we're not worthy of being an American when we are the ones that built this country. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Like we talked about in past shows about, is it a cool thing or is it a good thing that, Blacks in this country should feel patriotic? And I think having learned the true history of, what this country was built on, who actually built this country, and to find out that it was mostly coming from the West African slaves, they started it, and then their ancestors later on who brought so much to the, economic building of this country, industrial revolution on forward and behind. That needs to be something that's talked about to reinstate that sense of self-pride,
right,
and build it back up to what it should be, so that moving forward we don't go recur the same problems over and over.
So moving forward to the topic of the day, right? Culture, because the topic of the day is culture of acceptable toxicity. Okay. There was a typo there, but culture of acceptable toxicity. All right. Now, we live today in what we consider a very toxic world. All right. What is meant by toxicity, you say? The quality of being toxic or poisonous, being very harmful or unpleasant in a pervasive or insidious way. Okay? Meaning that everything about you, everything about what it is toxic and poisonous. It's harmful or unpleasant. It's nothing about it that. All right. Where did this culture of acceptable toxicity come from? Joe?
This acceptance of culture, I believe it started from the initial times where it was introduced. Like we mentioned earlier, we talked about how it was introduced during ancient times. A lot of structures were created around toxic behaviors. I don't think at that time it was necessarily identified as toxic, but due to what we've seen and what we've read and what we know, we can identify that now as it being toxic. Just rape cultures, racism, proclamation. Those things could be identified as toxicity, and we're just still trying to understand where did it come from. There's just so many values and so many opinions on what toxic is, and we're still trying to identify it. And I think every day we're being understood, or we're being understood of what toxic is, and we still have a lot further to go.
Yeah, Zach. So the same thing to you. Why? What makes it acceptable today? What makes it an acceptable thing, or has it always been?
I think it's sort of like, you know, after generations of going through something, it becomes like the norm, or like a person that grew up in an abusive household, then they learn to accept it in their own personal lives when they grow up.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes for why it's accepted. But I think we're past just being accepted. I think we're to the point now where it's being promoted, you know, and we're being fed through many different channels of media, social media having the biggest impact on molding the minds of the youth and the you know, younger generations than us, even our generation, you know, so that it becomes more acceptable when more people are promoting it as something cool. You know what I mean? It's kind of like even the music that we grew up on, like I mentioned earlier when I was, you know, giving flowers to Snoop, how in his early days, you know, his gangster rap and portrayal of a player pimp lifestyle was cool. And we were being fed this in our music. You know, whatever you talk about, whatever you consume, that becomes who you are. And
Right.
that's why it becomes acceptable now, because everybody's being fed this content and influence with it. And now this is normal to us.
Right. So me personally, I think that it came from the beginning, like you said, the beginnings of the building of this country. When this country was built, it was built off of a system of toxic behaviors. All right. And what became acceptable. So they wanted to dictate to their people what is good and what is bad. And in essence, they wanted to play God if you believe in God, or the Most High, if you believe in the Most High, or a higher power. They wanted to be the epitome of of all rulership. You understand what I'm saying? So in doing so, they wanted to control the moral fabric of everybody's mind. How, you know, think about it. What better way than to control this, the yin and the yang, that what you said, the conscious.
Yeah, I
You
don't
know?
think it's wanted. They still want to. That's their goal. That's
Oh yeah.
what they do, you know?
And then constantly they do so. That's the reason why this topic is happening now. Correct. The reason why we're
Absolutely.
talking about acceptable toxicity is because they said racism was a legal thing at one time. Remember, racism was legal at one time. They,
No issue.
you know what I mean? Beating on a black man and treating him inhumane was legal. It was actually a legal thing you can do. It wasn't a thing that you was doing that was looked upon as you was demonic or nothing like that. Nobody,
Yeah.
they was laughing. They was laughing about it. They were sitting there singing praises. They were singing songs. They were sitting by campfires burning marshmallows while our
Yeah.
people was hanging. You
Yeah.
understand what I'm saying?
While they were burning bodies at the same time.
So my thing is, it don't blame us for having a culture of acceptable toxicity. I look at it from the beginning, the forefathers of this country who built this whole thing. You know what I mean?
Well, let's rephrase that, calling them forefathers. You know, the people that built the country are the forefathers,
Right,
right?
right.
And
And
they're the ones
that's
being
our people. You're right. You're
and
absolutely
but
right.
I know who you mean and why you refer to them, because that's who everybody looks at, and that's what we've been taught as the forefathers. I
And
get it.
it's the
I
mind
get it.
meld. It's the
And
mind meld.
I agree with you. It's, you know, so many generations have, after the so-called founding fathers of this country, you know, took over and put out the Constitution and all this other stuff. Man, slavery was something that was an institution that was way before that. You know, and it's been going
So,
on, and it's still going on today.
so real quick.
Generations
So
of behavior.
So real quick, what I want you guys to give me is an example of acceptable toxicity within our culture, but give me a direct example. So if you're saying, okay, racism, what are signs of acceptable toxicity within when you look at racism? For example, Donald Trump. That was acceptable, right? That was an acceptable situation, correct? Give
Be
me
more.
more examples within the culture of acceptable toxicity.
I give you one, using the N-word. It's come from behind it, right? We know what it means. I don't believe that BS about how you can change the word into a positive. We know the basis of that word was a negative context. So for us to still continue to use that word, even if it is positive, it has a negative instinct about it. So that could be identified as a toxic culture or toxicity, you know?
So, Joe, as I agree with what Joe just said, since the episode we had about learning or unlearning the N-word, I've heard some other point of views on that, in defense of using it, by black males in this country, explaining to white men. One was on CNN where he's like, yo, man, I forget exactly who it was. And he was like, you don't understand why we use it is because he's the only one that understood what we were going through when y'all called us this, when he made us this. And yes, I refer to him that way because he understands the way I think, our culture, what we go through, why we are the way we are today. It's about the black community or the black mentality. And so I agree with you 100%, Joe. I'm not for the using of that word, but I also understand that there's a reason for that toxicity to still remain today.
Yeah. So, all right. So when you look at the self-proclamations of being toxic, meaning that's me, I'm that bitch. I'm this. I'm that. I'm I'm a bad bitch. I'm a what city girl? What was that? City girls, hot girl summer. It was a hot girl summer.
And then the city girls thing too. You're right.
Yeah, those are self-proclamations of acceptable toxicity, meaning I'm going to accept being a hoe. I'm going to accept being a bad mother. I'm going to accept that my kids are bad. You understand what I'm saying? Those are different things, right? The devaluation of the family. I'm going to accept that the father isn't home. I'm going to accept that, guess what? I grew up without a father. You know what I mean? These are all things that's within the culture. Those are the examples I'm speaking of, right? The racism, acceptable racism, when you got people walking around with a Confederate flag. You understand what I'm saying? Right in our face. You know what I mean? When you had all of these statues up that had what? The all of these slave owners just being championed and looked upon as the pride of this country, when in fact it should be our people who have all of these statues, correct? With all of those, I'm going somewhere with it. With all of those, why? Why is it being championed in our communities?
Well, it starts with what we've been taught in school. So more or less, like I don't think it's accepted when they walk around with this Confederate flag, because people is not really, certain areas they ain't having that, you know what I mean? And people are not really accepting that part. But what is being accepted is that we're being taught that Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves and he had slaves. What is being accepted is that we're being taught in school that these so-called four founding fathers that you mentioned earlier were actually good men that built this. They were to be glorified when they were actually slave owners, and that they perpetuated upon, that generation what is being shown today.
But the question still remains. Why is it being championed in our communities? Why is it continuously? Why do we know that they use us? Why do we know that we've been subjected to slavery and as such, but yet still champion these behaviors? Meaning the pimp lifestyle. There's dudes out here still being pimps. There's dudes still out here still abusing our women. There's men out here, our cultural and religious belief systems that encourage and support the abuse and devaluing of women. You understand what I'm saying?
It's been written into Hollywood movies,
Right.
Okay.
The narrative has been put out there in all the different channels of content consumption that we interact with daily since our youth.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
That's what I was going to say. Like, when you promote something or when you put an energy out there, that's what it is. Everybody's going to want to become part of it, no matter how bad it is, because it's drawing money. It's making people popular. It's what's hip right now. And everybody wants to be hip and trendy. So no matter how negative the connotation is, people are going to fall for it. It's like that apple that you can't have, and then you're going to do everything you can to get it because somebody said, don't get it. don't touch it. It's not cool. You shouldn't have it. But it looks so nice up there. I want to grab it. I want to see what it's about. And that's what I think this culture of toxicity has done. You know, we know that it's bad, but wouldn't it be cool just to be on that side right now? It sells.
All right. I like this point that the writer wrote in. Toxicity sells in this day and time. And we're going to talk about that after this break. Talk about toxicity some more and why is it acceptable in our community. Back at you. Hello. How can we remedy these issues? We're going to talk about how can we remedy these issues. We're going to talk about we got current event. We're going to definitely talk about Brian Flores. But once we get back from these messages from our network, the Evening Rush.
Looking to podcast shows and do not know where to start? The Evening Rush Network can help you with that. Call us at 929-441-2417 or email us at theeveningrushnetwork@gmail.com for dates and prices. We got you for all your podcast needs. The Evening Rush Network. Tune in, subscribe, and share.
And we are back. We are sponsored by Baller. That's www.baller.org. That's Big Apple Leadership Academy for the Arts. That is one of those programs that is trying to combat the toxicity of our community, the things that's going on in our community that's hurting us. We want to uplift our women to make sure that they understand that they are a very, 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 very important part to the progress of our people, if not our lives, in a sense. You know, it's a life and death situation. The topic of the day, of course, is culture of acceptable toxicity. We spoke on different what is meant by toxicity. We spoke on that. We gave a few examples that we're going to speak to as a few more as well. There was something that a writer had wrote before we had left. What they said, toxicity sells. All right, let's speak to that. Let's speak to that, guys. Let's speak to that point. Toxicity selling. Why? Why does it look good? Does it sound good? Is it just embedded in us? What is the reason? Why is it selling?
Go ahead, Joe.
I think it just draws to, finances, and draws something that's bad they want to find the good in it. So I think with toxicity selling, I think it's a negative that people are trying to turn into a positive, or it's just a negative that's been accepted to become one. Like we know in mathematics, two negatives equal a positive, right? Mm-hmm. So if you have somebody who's negative selling toxic, and then you have another person who's selling a toxic culture, it's going to become a positive. And that's how I feel. That's how I feel the toxic energy is being portrayed and being sold and being sold. We know when you're thinking of toxic.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think
that's a great point. That because someone wrote in just now, just real quick, Zach. I'm sorry not to cut you off, but it says someone that made a point saying it has Jada has made a point and said it has replaced sex sells. Because remember, it was always about sex sells, but remember, sex selling had a limit. So she said sex sells in a significant expand, and that it significantly expands its reach because now we can target young people as well, right? You can have young kids on TikTok doing all kinds of bullying and doing all kinds of crazy wild stuff, and it and it'd be morally sound because guess what? It's not sex anymore. You know what I mean? Because remember, you have an age that you have to get to start selling it to them, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
So, this is, me always going back to the systemic agenda, because I think it's not brought to the surface enough. We are so brainwashed. We are so, herded like cattle and sheep to be, guided to a certain mentality. And so that the agenda can take place. And this is what's happening, what's been happening. Why is it acceptable? Why is it promoted? Why is it selling? Well, because it's being glorified, and it's being glorified so that these negative things can have an impact on our society.
How
And
is
they
it being glorified?
well, we spoke about that. It's put in movies. You know, the pimp role is glorified. He's the hero. You know what I mean? He smacks around his woman, say, "Go get my money, ho." You know, and then it's also on all kind of different movies. We're not just talking about that. We're talking about
what about our music? We saw about Snoop and hip hoes and tricks,
and then abusive behavior and all kinds of movies that are not even about that. You know, it's just being sprinkled and peppered here and there to keep us in that mind frame. Why? Because can keep us fighting amongst each other. We are easily controlled when we are fighting amongst each other, to tear the household apart from the inside out, to keep our children miseducated and focused on vanity instead of building themselves and learning how to become a productive member of a family, and then a productive member of a community, and then building something as a people. So this is why it sells, and this is what the reason why it's being glorified. So,
right. But I mean, listen, this is their culture. They created their culture. So it doesn't surprise me that they're glorifying what they've created, right? Someone had wrote in, there's also the financial gain of these content creators whose concerns are more about their bottom lines than the effects of the content they create. That's capitalism. You know, that's what we're built on. Excuse me. We're a country built on capitalism, you know, and that's the nature of it.
That's just playing their part as part of the problem, because you're capitalizing on something that's meant to tear your own community apart, or tear us as in people in general, not just the Black community, but all people that surround us, from uniting and from building anything. So now it becomes cool. So yeah, I'm a content creator, so now I'm gonna make some money. Oh well, this is already selling, so this is what they're doing, and they're a bigger part of the problem. And it,
right.
you know, it was like what happened with rap music. It wasn't cool to talk about conscious stuff no more. It ain't selling.
Yeah, but you know, because that was the late 80s, early 90s. That's when they was with the Daisy Age and the Positive Voice, Public Enemy, and the such. Joe, I need you to give me, like, right now, right? Because right now in today's time, you know, what in today's time, like right now, are all of those signs of toxic behavior within our community? We talked about through the years, right? You know, and stuff like that. What is today's time? What can we tell our kids to look for?
Oh, well, behaviors of the non-encouraging, the behaviors of those who look at you and don't understand where you're coming from, and put insensitivity. That's a form of toxic behavior. Any type of negative dwelling where you're not able to succeed, that's a form of toxic behavior. Mm-hmm. In the culture in regards to family, those who resent family or the building of a foundation of a family, that's toxic behavior. So, and a lot of that happens nowadays because people are taught to fight for self, and it doesn't matter what else you've done or who you can create outside of that. But as long as you got your back, everybody else doesn't mean nothing to you. That's a toxic behavior, because we've already established a long time ago that building a family is the part of this, is part of the creation, is the reason why we succeed as people. But when you have all these other cultures telling you, oh, you don't need this, you don't need that, you can do it by yourself. That's toxic. It defeats the purpose of, of building and growing.
Zach, do you have any other toxic behaviors that we could list, that we could piggyback off of what Joe just said?
Yeah, the woman saying, or the young teenage girl growing up talking about, I don't need a man, or as soon as you say something I don't like, the relationship over. And then she grow up like that, and then now she don't want a man in her house. She just wants to use men, the same way she was taught that it was cool for men to use women when she was growing up, or when her parents grew up and she learned that in her own household. So yes, that's one form. And then the men walking around talking about, well, I don't care anyway. Everybody's playing like it's cool to not have feelings.
Right. Everybody's playing cool
until it's not cool no more, and now you crying out because you got, well, we talked in last episode, mental health issues. Now, since all of a sudden
you storing all that negativity. You storing all that negativity.
You being coerced into thinking it's cool to not have feelings. Now, when you come down later on with these mental health issues, you don't want to say nothing now, and that's why you have these mental health issues, and it's not cool to talk about it now because you just had no feelings.
So you're just compiling the problem on top of the problems you're already dealing with, because you got a system that's whipping on our backs, and then all of a sudden you got just exactly pride. Pride doesn't allow you to fix yourself. You know what I mean? That's pretty deep. You know what I mean? And the reason why I wanted us to list the things that we can visibly see within our household, that way they can look at their children and understand the acceptable toxicity, meaning those are the things that they champion themselves about. I've done heard kids sit there and be like, I'm crazy, so what? You know what I mean? Like, no, you're crazy, you should get help. You understand what I'm saying? Or the one I used to hear, oh, that's so-and-so how they is. That's just how they is. What do you mean that's just how they is?
Wait. I got one for you. It is what it is.
It is what it is. Actually, I say it is what it is. And the reason why it is a bailout. It's a bailout. The reason why I say it is what it is, it's a bailout answer.
Well, here's how it's being used now more so. It is what it is when you're being confronted when you're the problem. No, I ain't the problem. It is what it is. This is who I am.
Right.
Because you can say it in a term of agreeing with the fool and departing. It is what it is. I'm out of here. You understand what I'm saying? Because you can do it in that sense as well. I get what you're saying.
Or take it or leave it is another one as well. That's
right.
So
what I wanted our people and the people that's listening today is to get an idea of all of those acceptable toxic ways that we all have. You can look in the mirror right now and you can see all of these different ways that you already have done it. You've done it consciously and unconsciously. You've done these things. You've accepted it, and you've actually promoted it, and you actually got the ball rolling for our generations to come to keep going through the same things over and over again. The same cycle of mental health issues, the same cycle of going through depression, the same cycle of going through anxiety. What are you anxious for? Slow down. You know what I'm saying? What are you so hype about? Slow down. Get the answers. We so quick. We want everything so fast, right? So speaking of fast, go ahead.
Can I speak on that real quick? Us being from New York, that's our energy. It is deemed as toxic, yes, but that's the energy that helped build this city. We're always on the go, fast, want everything right now, around now. But it's not necessarily a good thing. Like you said, we need to take our time, we need to calm ourselves down, and we need to find solutions to the answers.
2 words, burnout. 2 words, exactly. Burnout, bro.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
I've seen people go through it. I'm watching people go through burnouts. You know what I mean? We have our writer says that we live in a world where there's an insatiable desire for individuality. People will embrace any character trait that helps them define themselves as unique, even if it's toxic.
That's what's being promoted on social media. You can be yourself because you are in charge of the content on your channel.
Right.
And it's
because what's come on. You got chicks out there on social media showing, having sex on social media, meaning, got their bodies, got their, it's all kinds of stuff going on. You know what I mean? Out there. So let's speak to the youth real quick, all right? Before we move on to the one question that we really need to spend a little time on is how can we remedy this issue? All right. The culture of acceptable toxicity amongst the youth is exacerbated by social media. And this is going to lead us into remedying the issues, right? Because I think it's more rampant amongst our youth than it was when it was amongst us. Like, we accepted toxicity based on the system pouring it on us, in a sense. I think growing up, Joe, if I'm not mistaken, I felt like the system poured all that toxic stuff, the crack epidemic, even all of the seediness that happened with us growing up, all the things that we went through, the drug game, the gun, the gun violence and the such, right? But amongst our youth right now, they're promoting it, they're living it, they're looking for it, and it's exacerbated by the social media.
It's the latest internet trend.
Right. Well, like I was gonna say, everybody's trying to find a way to be themselves, but be different. And adding to that difference doesn't, like you said, it doesn't matter if it's good or bad. It's going to trend. It's going to sell. It's going to make them cool, make them popular. They don't care about the overall effect of it as long as what's happening in the now. Like we know futuristically speaking that it's something that'll cause a breakdown or cause a burnout. But they're more in the now, right now. How are people reacting to it? How are people feeling towards it? And there's no care about the later after effects of what I'm doing right at the moment.
So Zach, real quick, because yes, you're right. You're spot on, Joe. They're trying to capitalize off of their toxic ways, and this country actually pays for that. You understand what I'm saying? And like I said, it's a vicious cycle because we're watching it and getting some type of joy out of watching the shit show, so to say. Excuse my language, guys. You know what I mean? But with all that said about social media, how can we remedy this issue, Zach? What? Let's get to that. We spoke about it. It hurts. It hurts.
Well, we know there's a reason why TikTok became the #1 platform, right? And so how do you get around this when the system is designed, this digital era is designed to mold people's minds, especially the youth? Well, we have to monitor their content consumption. Okay. And like you have parental controls for what your kids could watch on YouTube. But by the time they're a teenager, the parents is not monitoring their content consumption. They're on TikTok consuming this toxic content, where they're being taught that it's cool not to have feelings, it's cool not to care about what nobody thinks. And you're really being taught to be a front artist, so how do you get rid of that?
So you want to reduce the exposure to social media and other platforms?
Well, that's a parent's job to counter that into home. So have more family interaction. Learn to appreciate other aspects of life that are taken for granted today. You spend more time on your phone. This is an average statistic that people spend 4 hours a day minimum on their mobile phones, and most of that time is on social media. So imagine
for children, though. Is that only for children, though, brother?
No, we're talking about adults. So now imagine children, imagine teenagers. Now it's more than that.
You wasn't even talking about children.
No, that's for everybody in the average of everybody. So for teenagers, it's higher. Yeah. Now, if a parent doesn't monitor so bent on monitoring the content of what your children can see on YouTube, and that's why they have YouTube Kids out and all that stuff now. Why are you not so bent on when your child is at a more vulnerable stage of life where they could be influenced and they're learning to be who they really are? Why are you not monitoring the content of what they consume as teenagers?
Or the funny part is some of these women is more caught up in finding out what the man of their lives is doing online than their children.
Because parents is too busy on social media themselves. You can't tell your child to stop it, and you on it too.
You're doing it too, exactly. Yeah. And for an adult, you should have a more conscious. Well, what I'm doing is wrong.
Come closer to the mic, Joe.
There should be some moral to what you're doing, but most of the people, the adults who are doing it, don't have those morals either. So how are you going to teach your kids about any of that?
I mean, let's be realistic. I'm not a saint when it comes to I only, view, wholesome content on social media, because I get caught up in it too. And I got to check myself, be like, what are you looking at? But this is what I started doing, practicing what I click on and what I consume while I'm on social media, because even though the algorithms are set to change, it was every 3 months. Now it's every month. Facebook, Meta, whatever, Instagram and TikTok are modifying their algorithms. There's one thing that stays consistent in that algorithm, and they will feed you the content that you most consistently click on and consume.
Right, and that's what I was getting to.
And you will change the toxicity that you consume.
Right, and that's what I was getting to. You could check. Facebook will let you know what kind of toxic person you are. You know what I mean? If you're getting a bunch of sex, sex offers, if you're getting a bunch of fight videos and all that other stuff.
That's what you click on.
Me personally, I get nothing but spiritual and positive things. You know what I'm saying? Like you said, I get my dirt from where I want to get it from because everybody have their fix, right? You know what I mean? But yeah, very much so, Jada. I'm pretty sure of this. But we moving on because we want to get to the remedies, right? So one of the remedies, let's list them, right? One of the remedies is reducing exposure to social media, and that's for children and adults. Number one, reduce social media exposure. Stop, get off social media every now and again, tune out, and then tune into your family, right? Because that goes into what? That goes into our next one, right? Because it says what? Reintroduce positive male figures into the home, right? Because we're talking about our community and even their community, you know, and that is humanity. Humanity need positive male figures in their home, and the positive male figure. Yeah, and the positive male figures is those that understand humanity is one big smorgasbord. It's not broken down into race. Nope. America created race. Yep. You understand what I'm saying? America, no other country had race as part of their makeup, except for when America wanted to separate the white slaves from the black slaves.
That's right.
In ancient times, it was nationality and culture.
And guess where I learned that at? 1619. Let's go. Education. Education, right? Education. Yeah. It leads us right along, right? So let's talk about reintroducing positive male figures into the home. Let's speak briefly, because you guys, and I'm gonna tell you guys from the heart, you guys are positive male figures in your home. Okay, both of you gentlemen, you guys do the thing. You understand what I'm saying? Shout out to Shone from the Evening Rush Network, who is also another positive male figure in his home. So it's happening. It's not like it's a unicorn. It's right here on this show right now. I don't toot my own horn, but I know I'm positive and I'm a male figure and I have a home. So therefore, there you have it, right?
I'll do it for you. You the positive male figure, that even I draw from at times.
Right.
Definitely.
So, right. Are giving each other our flowers because we deserve it. Right. That's what it is. Like we promote it, and we need more people to keep doing that.
We say reintroduce, but we're here. That's what we need to start doing. We need to start taking pride in the fact that they are here. What we do is have acceptable toxicity and say the deadbeat is what's what. You understand what I'm saying? Because the deadbeat just be out here doing him, right?
Well, so how do we correct it? How do we correct it when the women grow up in an environment where she's taught that she doesn't need a man, and then they're on social media wishing each other happy Father's Day because she's a single mother?
Acceptable toxic behavior.
Yeah, and so how do we destroy that and turn that around as a positive male figure comes into the woman's life, or how does he stay with a woman if the women are being taught?
That's a whole nother show, man. You got to stop doing that at the end, man. That's a whole nother show, man. Like we tried to get to the point of the remedy. Get the male figure in here. Now you trying to.
I'm gonna give you one solution. I think we need to take responsibility. If we're a positive male figure, we need to take responsibility. We were a part of the problem at some point in our lives, or the generation before us, and even our generation, and that now that it's this way, it's our job to help fix it by showing good examples and be more supportive, and not give up so quickly when she's ready to just give up and throw away on the man in her life. Well, I ain't got time for you neither. F you too, then.
Now that goes into
somebody has to kids.
Well, here's what I'll say about that. Here's what I'll say about that. We need to enforce positive affirmation. There's a such thing as positive affirmation. The more somebody hears something positive in regards to, to the reverse of what toxicity is, they're going to believe it more. The problem is they're not getting positive energy or positive affirmation.
We are poured on the toxic behavior. The toxic examples are poured on us through media, through social media, through regular television, through history books, through the movies, through the radio, through the music, through everything, right? So, like he says, positive affirmation is necessary, and that is why you have to walk around and say, "Hey, my sister, you look beautiful today." And, I mean, instead of it being, "Hey, use a bitch," or use a hoe, or you this, that, and the third. We have to start singing, like I said, raise the value of the women in the home, of the women in our community. Y'all are mothers. Y'all are queens. You understand what I'm saying? Y'all are very important to the fabric of who we are. You know what I mean? As men.
Start with the individual. We have to change the way we were raised talking. When you get mad, don't call your woman out her name.
Communication.
You
That's
know what I'm saying?
communication.
Sometimes the best way to teach somebody the right behavior is to show them through example.
How to do it.
Don't tell them that they're wrong and try to correct them when they get out of line. Show them the right way to treat somebody. Show them the right behavior, the right words to say in a situation. And so it has to get rid of this toxic behavior. Every individual has to start with themselves.
So we have to have self-love. You have to love yourself. You have to want the best for yourself. No, have some pride for yourself. Have some trust within yourself. You know what I mean? Have to trust within your people. No, Joe?
I totally agree. Well, we talked about this in the past that the trust is a two-way street, but only one person's driving. You know what I mean? And we got to continue that process of showing trust. It's so easy to be untrustworthy to somebody because that's like a safe mechanism for a lot of people. But we have to put our hearts out our sleeves sometimes and say, hey, I'm willing to do that. If we don't do it, we don't know who or what we can trust. And
that becomes a matter of self-reflection, as someone wrote in. Self-reflection is a part of self-love. It's a part of this whole mission of getting rid of acceptable toxicity, because it is actually burning us out as a people. It is making us look. It's making our women look older. Our boys look older. They're relying on drugs to get past the pain of the cultural toxicity. You understand what I'm saying? Listen. They need to start understanding the importance of that and value of a positive public image. Meaning, right now you're making all these mistakes, but then down the line when you need that job or when you need that opportunity, and all of a sudden somebody pull up your files from back in the days when you was wilding out, being all toxic and being all publicly toxic, for that matter, now your opportunities is limited. No?
Yes. And that's what social media promotes too, that this behavior is being promoted to the point where when you're young, you're not supposed to care about nothing, what nobody thinks about you, or, not supposed to have feelings. But when you get older, you start to care more about what people think. And then you get to a point past that where you don't care about what people think because you're on your own self-building mission. So like the writer wrote in, I believe it was Jada, who said, how do you fix it if you don't know you have a problem? Right. So it has to be you. If you don't recognize that you're toxic, I mean, at some point you have to evaluate your life. How many of us go to sleep at night and say, what do I need to fix within myself? Right. That should be a normal human behavior if you're trying to grow, and if you're not, it's because you're being influenced and you are becoming part of the problem. So at some point, when do you wake up? How do you get people to wake up? What do you tell them?
How do we say because when we get our readers come in, I want to always respect our the people that's listening and writing in. So if you catch us taking a pause and a little turn to the left or turn to the right, just understand we just want the people that's chiming in and checking us out to have a fair voice, in our show, because we don't want to sit there and bombard you guys. You might have a great, great thought, great idea, or what have you. We want to make sure that you're heard. Shone wrote in, but that's not fair because of the thoughts during a moment. It is quite fair. And I'm going to tell you why it's quite fair is because guess what? Most of these people know exactly what they're doing. Yeah. All right. They're like, we want to hide behind what? What's that? Temporary insanity? Is that what we're doing? That's the quickest law and order defense I've heard. Everybody is just insane at one point and flipping out and had a moment in life and time where it was just too much. Like, come on.
Well,
so I flip you the middle finger and then tell you, I didn't mean it like that.
Not even that. Think about the old analogy with the devil and the angel on the shoulder. The devil's telling you that come on, do this. It's cool. And the angel is like, I don't think you should do that. Have your moral. And then it's up to you to decide which side you choose. So it's like you said, everybody knows what they're doing. It's about them outweighing the pros and the cons. Is it going to be as bad as we think it is? And if it is, can we take it? And that's what into this as well.
that devil ain't just popping up on the shoulder no more. And with the angel on the other side, now the devil is in the content you consuming. The devil's in your household. The devil's all around, that little devil. And we know we're speaking metaphorically about toxicity, right? What that little devil represents. So every time, it's not just you battling yourself, you being constantly influenced with this behavior.
Right. Wow. And with that, we're going to wrap it up, man. We're going to just like the topic is so open, right? Says, how can we remedy this issue? Education, guys, right? Education. We agree education is important. Educating ourselves to know what toxic behaviors are. I say revisit what's toxic. Revisit our early relations in life. You understand what I'm saying? Revisit how we behave. You know what I mean? Revisit what triggers us. Yeah. Somebody wrote down, said the baby was triggered by trauma. Yeah, we need to understand what's toxic in our community and try to rewrite that. You know what I mean? I say rewrite the whole Constitution. Let's completely destroy it and start it all over, because the system was built on toxic behavior in the first place. All right, it was built basically on the back of slaves. All right, it basically the paper, the pen, and the table was our backs. Okay, basically that's how that was. So reintroduce positive male figures into the home. Raise the value of the women in the home. Communication, trust, pride, and self-love. All of those things is how we remedy this issue. Understand the importance and value of a positive public image, meaning the things you might do now may affect what's going to happen to you down the line. You're sitting here doing all of these different things now. You lose your scholarship down the line because of a Facebook post talking about you're racist or what have you, or you're doing blackface or what have you. Or I don't care. Let's thug it out. Let's thug it out, Jada. Equal to purge. Mano y mano. You know what I mean? May the best people win. Because listen, I bet black. Sorry.
Hey,
you know
man.
I
bet on black.
That's what a revolution is.
Yeah, I bet on black. You know what I mean? Honest with you. I'm being honest. Rip it up. You know what I'm saying? Communication, trust, pride, self-love. Under the positive public image is important, because, like I said, you go get a tattoo on your face because you want to be toxic. You want to show that I got so many tattoos. Now all of a sudden you can't get a job without putting makeup on your face, dum-dum. And reduce exposure to social media and other platforms. Real quick, we're going to touch on for a couple of minutes, not too long, but we just want to give a shout out and give him his flowers. Shout out to Brian Flores. Former Miami Dolphin head coach Brian Flores sues the NFL, one of the first people to ever do so, sues the NFL and three teams, the Dolphins, the Broncos, and the Giants. Unfortunately, my Giants, you see, New York Giants rep them, but I'm about to stop, maybe have to stop. Alleging discrimination regarding his interview process with Denver and New York, and his firing last month by Miami. The funny part is he was supposed to go do an interview with New York, right? Like on Thursday, but Bill Belichick hit him up on Monday and said, yo, congrats on getting the job, Brian. Wink, wink. Brian said, but wait, I didn't go do the interview with the Giants yet. How am I getting a congratulations for the job? Wink, wink. Oops, my bad. I meant Brian, the white guy.
The white
guy, Brian. I meant So he says that it was already before he even did his interview. So why am I doing the interview? It was for show. It was for fun. It was for fake. It was for play. You know what I mean? The Rooney Rules is really just nothing. So he decided he's going to sue the NFL. And I just want to give him his flowers for starting something really, really big. I think we're going to talk on it probably even more deeper next week. But Joe wanted to give him his flowers this week. Joe, want to give him his flowers?
Yes. Good job, Mr. Flores, for setting an example of what to be done. I mean, it's sad that it had to take this to do that. I mean, we understand why the Rooney Rule was put in place so that a minority coach can be looked at. But the Giants found a loophole around it. They said, okay, we're going to have a black candidate, but we're not going to interview him. Hey, at least we still got our black candidate. So that's what I see when I see what's going on.
But they did interview him, by the way, though. They interviewed him. His interview was Thursday. Bill Belichick, my man, Bill Belichick, always messing up, boy. He always doing something silly. Zach, what you got to say about this real quick, man?
I don't think that it took this to make it happen. I think they slipped up. You opened the window and it was time for it to happen. So you know what I mean? So now he's doing the right thing by taking advantage of his platform, his stance, his position.
Right. He sort of fell on the sword in a sense because Bill Belichick actually dropped the ball. Bill Belichick messed up. His name is Brian Flores. The Giants coach name is, if I could find it real quick. What's the Giants coach name, Joe? Real quick.
Brian DeBoli.
Brian, yeah. So he has Brian and Brian in his phone. He finds out that Brian got the job. He texted the wrong Brian. Yeah, and that Brian. Now, mind you, taking the interview meant that you get a fair shot. You understand what I'm saying? Meaning, that means if you're going to make me fly out to an interview, but you already gave it to someone else, what are you making me fly out to this interview for? Because you want to make sure that your statistics are met.
That's right.
So, flowers to Brian Flores, flowers to my man Joe, flowers to my man Zachariah, flowers to Jada John behind the scenes, flowers to Shone Don, flowers to the Evening Rush Network, flowers to my family, flowers to everybody. And listen, this is Plug with Mahli and Joe, the Mental Warriors with my brother Zachariah. Peace.